Hey guys, Lonewolf here, and today I've got another breakdown for you, this time on Operation Locker. Now this is probably one of the more popular but also more contentious maps in the game. A lot of people really like it because they feel like they're going to be able to get quite a few kills just spamming MGs, grenade launchers or hand grenades into a choke point. And a lot of other people really hate it because they just feel it's too much of a clusterfuck to be played tactically. Now whilst both these statements can be true, I also feel it's possible to have some very intelligent, very tactical and very intense infantry combat if you really know what you're doing, and that's what I'm going to try and demonstrate in this video. Now I'm working with two other friends on TeamSpeak to begin with, and we're going to pick up another one later on in the game. You'll also see that on occasions I do actually kick public players out of our squad. This is because very often they'll spawn in on you when you really don't want them to be shooting, and then they'll go loud with some machine gun and it really messes you up. It's incredibly infuriating when people do this. I always think you have a responsibility to just assess exactly what your squad mate's trying to do before you spawn in and take some action on your own. You don't want to mess them up when they've made the effort to get into that position. Now, a lot of our teammates have gone outside into the snow lane, which is where I would usually go, and seeing we don't have a whole load of people in the middle, I felt like I needed to go and stand there and just stop the enemy team from instantly being able to push through and get B point. Having seen that we do in fact have enough people in there and realizing I'm not going to be able to push through onto C as I'd hoped, I'm going to double back, go through B and then reinforce my team out on the snow lane, which is where usually I would be in the first place. Now that we're outside and more or less safe from enemy fire, this is a good opportunity for me to consult my battle screen and try and formulate a strategy. Seeing how many enemies there are on C point, I really don't think it's going to be possible to push in and clear them all out. Even with the height advantage we get at the top of the stairs, I just don't think we're going to be able to overwhelm that many enemies, and in fact I was pretty sure coming up there that our team had already lost the top of the staircase, which they had. So me and my squad are going to push on past down to either D or E point. Whether or not you cut in at D or E is kind of down to the individual's discretion based upon the situation. It's going to be a judgment call. Mostly this comes down to how many enemies are on there, how responsive the enemy team is to an incoming threat. If they're quite responsive, then D point's out of the question because they'll double back very quickly. If they're not so responsive, if they are a bit thick, then you might be able to get away with that, but usually I'd say keep going on to E point. It's much safer most of the time. Now you'll see I've dropped down to try and come up by the helipad going down the cliff face. There's actually quite a lot of these little micro tactics you can employ on the snow lane, and I'm thinking about doing a separate pretty short video, maybe a couple of minutes, just showing exactly where all of these are. We can go up and down the cliff face in ways that I don't often see other people using, but can be very useful in a very real way. Coming in onto E point, this is again a judgment call as to whether or not you come in on the lower level or keep going past an attack from the balcony. In fact, because we had enough people in our squad, we sent Jester to try and do that. He was unfortunately taken down. Now I'm just going to let this enemy go here because I wasn't convinced I'd be able to land fatal damage before he disappeared around the corner. I thought it was best to get into a better position before I started shooting at him rather than give my position away and give him a chance to retaliate. I'm going to get this teammate up here instead of reviving the squad mate behind me because this one's in a different squad and it's much better for us overall if we can get two squads fighting for these two back positions than just mine. You'll see that I've moved far away from the rest of my squad. I always think it's quite a good idea to try and split yourselves up if you're flanking in this way. You're very dependent upon the squad staying up and having somewhere to spawn in on, so I don't think it's a good idea to all clump up in the same place where you can get taken out as a group. So by doing this, I've given my squad mates somewhere to spawn in on, and although we've lost the push onto E, we've retained the one on D because I moved away. Now that we've captured D flag, we have to make a decision as to whether or not we're going to try and hold our ground here and build up a ticket lead with A, B and D flags, or whether we're going to push back onto C and see if we can secure that, bringing our team through and locking down the middle of the map. Once we've done that, it's very difficult for the enemy team to push back. They more or less have to flank us to get it back. But the downside is if we leave D flag in the hands of our team, who often aren't particularly helpful, then there's a good chance we're going to lose that, and if we're then killed on C, we're right back where we started on B flag. So there is a bit of risk involved in both situations. On balance, however, we felt if we stayed on D, there was a good chance that even with a very competent squad, we probably weren't going to be able to hold off the huge numbers of enemies approaching from both C and E flags. So we moved on to C, and in fact we were able to take it very easily. When faced with opposition from both the staircase, the choke point approaching B, and also from behind, the enemy team more or less just folded. Getting to this corner, I brought my sights up before I could really see the enemy. When you know there's going to be people there, or even if you're just pretty sure there are, pre-aiming the corner can be extremely useful. It can just cut down the amount of time it takes for you to kill someone. Seeing those two enemies at the end of the hallway, I didn't have nearly enough health nor a good enough position to actually engage them, so I just ran straight away to the left, just getting out of the way, but unfortunately didn't have enough health to withstand that single headshot from the enemy at the doorway, and so traded with him. I swarmed back in, and then once again I've gone down the cliff face and come up by the helipad, just so that I avoid getting shot at from the entranceway onto D. Take this one sniper out here, and I'm just watching to try and get my squad across this gap. I'm just going to stand here and effectively draw fire if there was anyone there, and also try and retaliate, basically hoping that they're going to have laser sights or that I'm going to be able to see their muzzle flash, because that amount of blur that you get from the snow is going to make it very difficult for you to actually spot people inside unless they shoot at you. Attacking E flag again, I've stood pretty exposed out in the open here, a very obvious target, just so that we're going to know when the enemy is attacking and from where. There's a good chance they're going to shoot at me without thinking, and it gives my teammates who I know are hidden in corners a good opportunity to shoot back while the enemy isn't really looking for them. I've also pretty much established at this point that my aim, my reaction time is superior to the majority of the enemy team. This isn't bragging, you have to actually make this assessment on a game by game basis, and it does give you a little bit more freedom if you know that you're going to be quicker than the majority of enemy players. Now me and my squad is going to try and push back onto either D or C flags, because at the moment we have A, B and E. If the enemy team can take E, which is quite easy for them to do, it's right next to the deployment and between that and D, then we're going to get stuck at A and B point. We'll then have a minority of flags and we're going to have to try and flank them all over again. So we really need to get off this, try and again split the squad and get a different position where we can spawn in on, try and get our team to get them off C. Again, we need to get that middle control back and get them trapped back at their spawn. We aren't actually able to do this, and after about a minute we are actually taken down, and you're going to see this is the situation we end up in. We have with one squad mate here who, if he had gone down, would have meant that we're stuck back at B and C. As I get to the corner, I'm going to check on the right and call it clear for my teammates. I'm going to stay behind the metal detector for as long as possible, just to try and make sure I've got some cover available, and in fact I do push over it rather recklessly, and I'm almost punished for that. I revived my squad mate, and I was going to move up through the broken wall on my right, but I actually noticed one moving in from outside on my minimap, so I'm going to assume a crouch position here and just try and take him out as he comes through the corner. Unfortunately, I am shot from behind, and I call out to my teammates that we have a large number of enemies moving through the medical bay and then through the metal detectors. At this stage, we have actually stressed both D and E flag for long enough that my team's been able to secure C. We're in a relatively secure position, but we do still have quite a few enemies lingering around C, and I want to just keep stressing this flag for as long as I can, give my team a chance to mop up as many of those enemies as possible. I'm just going to try and hold here and stop the enemy team from pushing through D and then up to C, where my team is probably still trying to deal with the enemies who were on there in the first place. And you'll see I used my sidearm to try and continue the suppressing fire for as long as I felt was reasonable. I felt like at that point if I repeat the corner I would probably get shot, and I probably also didn't want to follow my squad mate around the left hand side, so I decided to jump back, go downstairs, which was probably quite a good play. Unfortunately, I didn't actually have anyone come through behind me to watch my back, and in this situation when there's so much fire, so many explosions, you're not going to be able to hear footsteps or even the sound of gunshots from behind you, and unfortunately was taken out once again. At this point, the enemy team's pushing both the outside snow lane and inside. They're going to get that choke point on the D side of it, but they're not actually going to be able to push through onto C. Our team's pretty much got that locked down with explosives and LMG fire, etc. I was lucky enough to get an outside spawn, which is very fortunate for our team, because at this point it's pretty much just me holding this together, at least for a couple of seconds here. My presence, along with the fact that I am actually killing a few of them, is pretty much holding them at bay. Now, arguably the enemy team should have been more aggressive here, pushed up when they had a chance, because now my team is coming up the staircase and reinforcing me. Once again, I'm going to go up the cliff face here, out of bounds, and come down on top of the enemy. Because I'm out of bounds, they're just not really expecting that. You've got to be wary of this if you're outside, that people can go out of bounds and come back in time to kill you. Once again, I'm cautious of this entranceway by D. I'm spamming Q and getting my sights up, preparing for a firefight there. A lot of people like to camp this and either shoot people as they come down the hill, or stand a little bit further back from the entrance and shoot people as they cross or try to push in. So once more I go down the hill, come up by the helipad. Having seen that my team's actually lost control of the choke point by C, I'm pretty sure the enemy team will be preoccupied by that, so I tried to go in the second entrance by D, seeing my teammates stupidly trying to use the phantom bow, knowing I didn't have any support, and also that I was trying to fight through the fog of being outside. I realized this just wasn't going to be possible, so I gave up on that. You've got to know when it's time for you to give up on an attack. You'll see here again, I'm moving up the cliff face. If you push hard into the left-hand side of that, you can kind of climb your way up. It can get a little bit strange. You can kind of get stuck there, and I think later on I do in fact get stuck there the first time I try. But it does give you a good position to be able to take people out who are just sitting on that corner, stopping your team from moving on. I continued this flag burn for a little bit, but with just one teammate to support me, we weren't actually able to hold on to this. I've now here spawned onto D, and instead of going straight for E as I usually would and try and get that position secure, I decided to double back onto D and see if I can take the pressure off my teammates who are trying to defend C. That way hopefully we can retain that flag and maybe even D as well. As I approach here, I'm ashamed to admit that I didn't actually notice the one on the minimap to my left, and he continued to shoot me, and instead of trying to challenge with that little health, I decided to just try and get to cover. I wasn't actually able to do this, and I'm just hiding in this corner here in this cell, seeing if I can get my squad mates to spawn in on me. I'm now just waiting for any enemies to attack us. I'm able to take out the one trying to knife Jester, no problem. An excellent example of why you should never knife anyone on lockers. Carefully peek that corner to get the first one, and only re-peek when I'm pretty sure the other guy is either going to reload or reposition. I then see that one is moving into the back of the other isolation cell across on the staircase through that broken wall, so I drop to the lower level, not giving him enough time to peek me from an advantageous position. I'm just remaining alert, watching each of my corners, making sure that I don't get taken out by anyone I don't see. I go up to the top of the staircase here where half my body's covered. It's a difficult position for him to hit me unless his aim is absolutely superb and he goes for the headshot, and at this stage I just need to stay up and give my squad mates somewhere to spawn in on.
Lost the backup.
Oh great. Fuck. Okay, I'm going outside. Can I get one on me please? So having seen that the enemy took both A and B flag, we decided to double back and see if we could resecure them, and although we don't manage to take B and I am going to die and my shooting is pretty appalling, I did want to highlight this bit because I feel like the enemy's play here is pretty smart, and it's exactly what I would have done if I was in his position. You've got to remain wary of where these gas pipes are in certain parts of the map. You'll see that me and a teammate are able to use it tactically in a moment. Moving into this room, I'm expecting there to be one coming through that doorway on the left, so I lean to the side of this wall, just keeping that watched. Then I see another one on this corner here who's actually detaining my squad mates, so I need to go and take him out, give them freedom to move, and then I move towards E. At this stage, I'd really like to get this flag. Although we do have a flag majority and we do have a ticket lead, it's a kind of tenuous one. We hold A, C, and D flags, and they hold B. That's the real problem, and they're also trying to capture C. So were we to lose C, we're then in a losing position, so I need to get whatever flag I can. When you're fighting against a team that's quite this aggressive and is doing quite a good job of playing the objective, you've got to take the flags you can when you can. You don't always get the option to put yourself in the most secure position, so if I can just get E for a couple of minutes, then that's the best we can really hope for. This here is another great example of where having a suppressor really helps you out. These people here probably don't have a clue where they're getting shot from, so I'd always recommend you take one on these maps where you're not hugely dependent on your long range effectiveness and that muzzle velocity you trade off when taking a suppressor. At this point, one of my squad mates sees that there's somebody pushing in from outside and decided to shoot the gas pipe. I was then able to peek to the side and shoot him as he pushed through, avoiding the fire. In this kind of situation here, when you're fighting a very aggressive enemy team, I can't even begin to imagine how difficult this would have been without a squad that was really alert and knew what they were doing. So, once again, working with your teammates is the most powerful weapon you can possibly have. Now that we've taken E point, I've seen that we've more or less lost control of the other flags. We've got A, but otherwise they're all under enemy control. So my plan was to double back and see if I could get either C or D point and give my squad mate someone to spawn in on. But I saw just how many friendlies we have on E trying to push through the medical bay, and so decided that my best option was probably to see if I could assist them, just take a couple out, make it easier for them to push through, and that's exactly what I'm going to do here. So I'm making sure that I have a position to attack where I can back off if I need to, where I can take time to reload, take cover, and that's exactly what I'm going to do, hop back over the metal detectors in case they come for me. You'll see I throw these med bags into the walls a lot of the time. This is just to stop them from going way in front of you where they're not going to latch on. You can of course also throw them into the floor, but I'm far more comfortable throwing them sideways where I maintain some of my peripheral vision than I am just looking at the ground. I'm trying to maintain our hold on D as our team is slowly wiped off of E. We're just losing people by the second, and eventually we do end up in a really bad position where we're stuck all the way back at B flag. I'm fortunate enough to get an outside position, but now I really do need to push up and get either D or E. C's not going to be an option. They're going to have the staircase very shortly. You'll see here again, I jumped down this cliff face. You can in fact jump down a little sooner than this, but I jumped down here because I didn't realize there was going to be any enemies until that point. We move down this hill. I take the M82 because if there are people at range, I'm much more comfortable trying to quickscope them with this than I am trying to take cover and shoot them with the M16. As I move down the hill, I'm going to execute the same maneuver, going down the cliff face to come up by the helipad, just keeping myself out of the line of sight of anyone coming from D or even coming up the hill over from E. But this time I am going to encounter some resistance. Fortunately for me, one of my squad mates who's a bit further up the hill is able to spot them and even take one of them out for me. At this point, I arguably played a little bit too defensively, stepping back a bit too much, which nearly got me killed. At this stage, my team has actually managed to get C, so it wouldn't be a complete disaster if I go down, but I am conscious of the fact that we have a much greater chance of success if I'm able to stay up. So once again, I'm staying behind cover as much as possible, not playing perhaps as aggressively as I usually would. Having seen on the minimap a few moments ago that there are hostiles moving out from E onto the snow lane, I want to try and get this vantage point, and as I referenced earlier, this is one of those few times where I completely screw up the climb. As I said before, you've also got to be wary that it's much easier for the enemy team to move up from the other side of this rock than it is from you the way I came. Now we're going to push past this first entrance and go to the balcony, and unfortunately here I become victim of the particle effects and glow that stops you being able to see in so easily from the snow lanes. The one downside of attacking from this side is it's much more difficult for you to see in than it is for them to see out. However, I did get the revive and we are able to push on to E. At this stage, I'm pretty sure we're going to win. We're 100 tickets ahead and the enemy only has 100 left. So I'm going to clean up a couple of kills here, and then Jester's going to call for some support on D, which is where I'm going to go. After a protracted fight trying to get back to D, I was eventually killed, but at this point our teams managed to maintain the status quo for long enough that the enemy team really doesn't stand a chance. When you have this many flags, tickets bleed very, very quickly. As I get to this corner here, I'm just slow peeking. I saw a lot of them on the minimap, and you'll see I'm just keeping an eye out just to make sure that last one went down. Now I'm really just trying to get kills for myself. There's really nothing I need to worry about for my team. I just wanted to get a few more to bolster my stats, and that pretty much rounded out the game. So thank you very much for watching if you made it this far. I know this was quite a long one, and in fact I didn't cut too much out of this game. It was only about 20 minutes long in total, which is relatively short for a Battlefield game, but I thought that most of it was relevant and hopefully interesting, so I left most of it in. Anyway, please do leave a like and subscribe if you enjoyed, and I'll see you next time.